Hi! Welcome to another Scratch tutorial. Today we're going to be going over operators. This is the green section. First are add, subtract, multiply, and divide. This can be done just to add numbers, or you can use certain variables. Like if your variable is keeping track of numbers, then you can use the variables and certain numbers to do some basic math for you. Pick random is very good to randomize. So even though they're just numbers, 1 to 10, you can use those numbers to equate to certain other things. So if you have a pick random 1 to 3, but then use a bunch of if statements, so if it's equal to 1, then you switch to custom 1, and if you pick random 1 to 3 and it's 2, you go to custom 2, and keep going like that. This is how you get random costumes, random backdrops, not just random numbers. Greater than, less than, or equal to. This compares numbers and says, is this greater than this number? Notice that they're hexagons, so these fit into the if-thens, if-elses, all of those. If 3 is not greater than 50, so this won't run, but 51 is greater than 50, so then it can do something. You would often use the first part as a variable, or you could use both as a variable so you can compare two things, and, or, and not. These are very important. They can be combined into each other, and the way this works is that with and, it will only run if both are true. Like if the first letter of the answer is A, and you're touching the mouse pointer, then it will do something. And both have to be true in order for this if-else to run. So that's and. Or only needs one. Let's say if it's touching mouse pointer or touching green. Only one has to be true in order for it to run. Touching mouse pointer, it'll play sounds meow. If you're touching green, then it will say meow, even if the other one isn't true. Not. So this is the opposite. Say if you're not touching green, then it'll go. Or if apple doesn't contain A, then it will go. And these can be combined. So this is very complicated, but if one of these or not one of these is true and something else, so then it lets some of them be optional and some parts have to have both. These can get super complicated, but as you get more experience in coding, it makes a little bit more sense. Join. We've used join before to join the answer with our own words. You can join multiple joins. If it asks what's your name, then it can say hello, and then the name with an exclamation mark at the end. And you can join this answer and the username. You can do all kinds of things with words with join. Letter 1 of apple. We're going to use this a little bit later, but this only takes the first letter of the word. We can use this with answer. The first letter of answer, you can check if that equals Y. So that way you don't have to write it in yes, it can be yeah. Either way, it just checks for the first letter. If it's a Y, then that probably is a yes if you ask it a yes or no question. So you can ask like, do you like butterflies? And even if the person spells yes wrong, or if they're more casual and just put yeah, it'll still see that the first letter of the answer was Y, and it'll switch to butterfly anyway. Just moving along here, the length. This sees how long the word is and turns that into a number. So apple, 5 letters, this will be 5. Again with the answer, you can ask what's your name, and then you can get the length of the answer. Right now it says 4 because the default is null. You don't have an input because it didn't ask what's your name. They don't have anything for answer yet. So the placeholder in most coding languages is null. Contains. I've used contains a lot when I code in Java. It looks if something contains another part of it. So you can look if the answer contains yes somewhere. What if they put yes because all of this stuff, and you just want to know if they put yes somewhere in that response. Or if you're looking for a certain snippet, like you're looking for how many times they have 2, then you can repeat looking for 2s until the answer stops having any 2s. if you want to count the 2's, you would basically go through, find the 2, remove the 2 you found, and then look for the next 2. And that's how you would do a lot of searching if I were to program that in Java. Mod. This looks at the remainder. So 5 mod 4 is the remainder of 5 divided by 4. This would be 1 because 4 goes into 5 one time with a remainder of 1 because 4 plus 1 is 5. 9 divided by 3 is 3, so there's no remainder. The remainder is 0. This finds your remainder, but is called mod in coding languages. I talked about the coding language Java a lot already. Instead of saying the word mod, it would say %. It's very confusing, but it's cool to see how things in Scratch really connect to more complicated coding languages. Round. This is if you have a decimal. This just rounds it to the nearest whole number, or 8.3 whatever, then it would just round to 8. Or if it's 9.7 something, if it's just 9.7 something, then that would round up to 10. Rounding. Abs of. Abs stands for absolute value. So -7, the absolute value of -7 is 7, and the absolute value of 7 is 7. Absolute value just takes the positive version of the number. Going back to our good old XY grid, if you think of it like a number line, this is 0, and absolute value is how far away you are from 0. So, if you're, say, 90 away from 0, then that can be 90 or -90. Both are 90 units away from 0, and basically, absolute value just takes the positive version of any number. You'll notice that absolute value has a drop-down menu. I'll go over as many as I can. Some of them are just a little bit complicated. Floor takes the lowest number, so even if it's 9.99999, that would usually round to 10, because 9.9 is much closer to 10 than it is to 9. Remember that if it's 5 or above, you take the one that's higher. If it's 4 or below, you take the one that's lower. Technically, you would only round up if it's 5 half the time, but it's complicated, very complicated. Most people just take 5 and round up. So let's say you have 9 point something. If this question mark is 0 to 4, you would round down to 9. But if this question mark is 5 or above, you would round up to 10. Depending on how close the decimal is to one of these two numbers. Cool, that's how rounding works. But with floor, it doesn't care about that. It just takes the lowest. Even though this would round up to 10, it doesn't care. It just chops off the whole decimal part and goes down to the lowest. Ceiling is the exact opposite. Where floor, no matter how high it is, it'll take the lowest whole number. Ceiling, no matter how low it is, it'll take the highest number. Even though that is so close to 9, it says, oh, this is a decimal, let me take the highest whole number I can between 9 and 10. Basically, if it's 9 or 10, it doesn't matter what the decimal is, I'm just going to take it all the way up to 10. And floor goes, I don't care how high or low it is, I'm going to take it all the way down to 9. Round is the little medium step, or it depends. Square root. You might have learned about square roots in math, so when something times itself, like 2 times 2, that is 2 times itself, equals 4. So then, the square root of 4 is 2. And you'll see here that if you take the square root of 4, it'll give us 2. Square rooting. If you haven't learned that yet, don't worry. Sine, cosine, tangent, acosine, atan. These are all about trigonometry, which is basically math involving triangles. You don't really need to use these a lot until you get into high school math. Same with natural log, e to the or 10 to the. Logarithms are also all upper school math. Do not worry yourself about any of those. At the level you're at, you probably learned a little bit about square rooting. If you haven't, don't worry. Floor, ceiling, absolute value, and rounding. Those can be useful if you deal with a lot of complex numbers, complicated numbers. So this is all about the scary, complicated math. And this is also some math. Things we'll use a lot more in Scratch is pick random if you want things to be random. That can be really fun. Equals, because not only does equals work with numbers, it also works with words. And or not, depending on what you're using them for, can be useful. Or maybe not. And joining we've already used. Letter 1, I already showed you an example, but let's get more into that. Your fruit platter when flag is clicked. Apple or banana. It's very serious in all caps. And now, we use our if else's. We did this last week with our basketball or baseball. There's only 2 options. So if it's not apple, then it has to be banana. So if the answer, if you want to know if the answer is apple, then you want to switch the costume to apple. Otherwise, switch your costume to banana. Usually would say if the answer equals apple, but we can do better than that. Now that we have our operators, we can check if the first letter of the answer is A. What if we're asking a very small child? What if that kid is trying to spell apple, but just got a couple letters mixed up? Or what if they're saying apples and it's not exact? This gives a little bit of wiggle room, so even if they say other things, it mostly looks like apple and starts with an A, then it'll still get the idea and turn it into an apple. Look, an apple. Otherwise, if you don't do apple, boom, banana. But let's say you spell apples wrong. It'll still turn into an apple even though it was a horrific spelling. Awesome. But what if you're asking one of those yes or no questions like, have you ever seen those kids shows where the character goes and looks through the television and it goes, hey kids, here's our little princess going, hey, do you think this griffin's evil? There's only 2 options, yes or no. So if it's not yes, then it must be no. I showed you before, if the first letter of answer is Y, then they're probably saying yes. But what if they're saying okay? Or what if they're saying sure? If you want to check for all of those answers, you're going to use or and or. That gives us 3 spaces. And remember, or will take any one of them. It's not that all 3 have to be true. That's what and. With or, any one of them can be true, and it'll still go. So if the first letter is Y, so we've got yes, yeah, taken care of. Sure and okay also have those taken care of. So then you're prepared for multiple answers that all mean the same thing. And she can still respond with, oh no, an evil griffin. And if they're not saying yes, then they must say no, which means the griffin isn't evil. Yay! A not evil griffin. Sure, I think the griffin's evil. Oh no. Hey, do you think the griffin's evil? We can say, nah bro, he's chill. Yay, a not evil griffin. It'll take either one. And it'll respond just as well as if you say, do you think the griffin's evil? Yes. If you think the griffin's evil? No. And this can be pretty useful. And it lets your code responds to your player in that way, like they're having a pretend conversation. And that can be pretty cool. Now next week we're going to get into a game called Pong. I'm just going to make a quick Pong background. I think this looks sort of like a soccer field. It makes it look sportsy. I don't know sports. Here we have our little paddle. And we have our little ball. Cool. The paddle's a little bit big. We want a challenge. More of a challenge. Yeah, this is decent. So, we have a lot of different costumes to choose from. We've got yellow, blue, pink, green, and purple. The first thing we want to do when flag is clicked is ask the player, what color should I be? And now, we're going to go, what colors are there? So part of the question should be giving you options. Yellow, blue, pink, green, purple. Now you have all the options. Let's drag in our if-thens. Here we are. 5 options, 5 if-thens. Some people can get a little mixed up in typing. So if they have a little typo, that should be okay. we're only going to take the first letter of the answer. Okay, and now, here we go. First one is yellow. First letter of the response is Y, and they're probably trying to say yellow. Let's switch to the yellow ball. If it's the first letter of blue, B is the first letter of the answer, they're probably trying to say blue. So let's switch the costume to ball B, which is the blue one. First is P, maybe it's pink. If the first letter is G, they're probably saying green. But wait, how would they say purple if the first letter of pink and the first letter of purple are both P? That's not good. Here we can pull in our ands. If the first letter is P for pink, or the first letter is P for purple, and see where it says letter 1? We're going to switch that to letter 2. The second letter of pink is I, and the second letter of purple is U. So we're going to go check for the first letter is P, and the second letter is I or U, and that determines everything. I like pink. I think it goes well with a paddle. Here we go. You can totally prepare different costumes for your paddle, which I just made with this rectangle tool, and ask the same thing, or you can just let the player only customize the Pong ball. This should be saved if you have a Scratch account. Only make one with a parent's permission. Next week we'll keep building onto this Pong game, but if you can't save it, don't worry. Next week when we work more on this Pong game, feel free to just rewatch this video and have a quick refresher on how to customize your little Pong ball. We're going to be totally building out Pong. If you don't know what that game is, ask your parents. It'll be pretty fun. First Amaze game and now Pong. You're going to have quite the Scratch collection at the end of this. Awesome. That's all I have for today. I hope you learned a lot about operators. I'm sorry for putting you through so much math, but having a quick intro to this math could be useful. Coding can use a lot of math, especially if you're a Python coder, Python being one of the coding languages. And when you get older and take harder math classes, you can go, oh, I remember when that random girl on the Sierra Madre library video told me about that. I'm sorry for putting you through so much math. Hopefully you got the gist of the most important blocks. I'll see you next week. Send any questions to sierramadrecoding@gmail.com.